This is Jeff with Shout Out Minnesota, and we are here with
Mike Tramp.
Mike. Welcome. We're at Pavlitsky's here in Spring Lake Park. You got a show here tonight.
We sure
acoustic set, courtesy of Viking Rocker Productions. Excuse me. Let's talk a little bit about. You've been around music for a long time. Can you give us a little background on the history and how you got into the industry?
Well, yeah, I mean, that goes back almost 40 years. Next year it'll be 40 years when I joined my first band in 1976, completely unplanned. But it happened, and I think from the second I got in there and got a little bit of a taste of it, I knew how to kind of approach it. And then one thing led to another. You know, I started recording my first album at 16 and a half, and which each album that followed that one, I started writing songs, and by the time we got to the fourth album, I had written all the songs and sort of almost taken over the band, even though the other three guys were 10 years older than me. I was just fueled for what I wanted to do, and bit by bit leading the band into a new direction. And as I discovered the sound of American rock, I started going, towards that. And in 1982, I arrived in New York with that band and started playing the clubs. And one of the clubs that I played, a place in Brooklyn called L'Amour's. And that night, another band called Dreamer was playing there, and it was fronted by a guitar player called Vito Bratta, and we sort of met in the dress room and looked each other over, and after the show, people were talking about that singer should be playing with that guitar player. Another four months went by, and I went back home to Denmark, where I was from, but I came back to America by myself. And the first night I went out in New York, a girl approached me in the bar and gave me Vito's number, says, "This is the guy you got to call." And shortly after, we started building this band.
Great. And the rest is history, obviously.
Yeah, the rest is Wikipedia.
One of the things I like to ask people who do perform acoustic shows, compared to a regular full band, what are some of the good and bad points with that?
Well, I mean, I like to, without patting myself too much on the back or insulting anyone else, I mean, my acoustic show is what I do. This is not something I do in between waiting for a band to reunite, or something I do on Thursdays and then the band plays on Fridays and Saturday. My introduction to music at an early age was Elvis and Roy Orbison and Johnny Cash and Bob Dylan and stuff like that. And I grew up in a big folk environment in Copenhagen, Denmark in the 60s. And it is my true foundation. It's my true foundation even to the White Lion songs. So for me to sort of return to that, I mean, let's put it this way, all the songs that I've ever written have been written this way that I'm playing them tonight.
Okay.
So for me to return and kind of like focus a little bit more about on the roots of what I'm doing is just a natural thing. I do understand that I had to go through the 80s, and I had to go through the 90s, and I had to put two big rock bands together and stuff like that before I started my solo career in 96, and then started laying down how Mike Tramp sounded as a solo artist.
Okay.
And since that day, I have been consistent with all my solo albums, and for those who have followed me, there's no doubt that I have a unique style, and that style has not changed or compromised. So, there's a lot of my colleagues from the 80s that go out and play acoustic guitar and stuff like that. But I say, in many cases, it's something, something in between, waiting for the band to reunite. So for me, it's not necessarily that there's a big difference in anything. It's just that I feel at home with what I do.
Okay, great. And you've been really active. Especially the last few years. You had your album Museum last year. You have something in the works this year, correct? When we talk about that and let the fans know what's coming up as far as
the thing is that music to me is something that starts on the inside, and these days where you're not signed to a record company or somebody knocking on the door saying, hey, we're waiting for the new album and stuff like that. This is all, I'm 100% in control of everything. I record the album and do it every which way I want. There's no compromise. I don't bow to anyone but myself. So it's a true self-expression in all my solo albums. I mean, in '96, when I did my first album, I made a vow to myself that the word I, capital I, would always represent Mike Tramp in every song that I wrote. And that's a big statement, because every song that I write now is nonfiction. It's my life, and that's just what I've chosen, to do. And over the past 3 years, I've delivered an album every year, and now also in 2015, Nomad will be released August 28th, and it's sort of like a trilogy, the completion of the trilogy that I started with Cobblestone Street. Right. For those that will own those 3 albums, they will know what I'm talking about. Okay. But the 3 albums belong together. It's one step after another, and then finally with the new album, I get to a plateau that beyond there, I don't want to go anywhere. I have reached everything that I want to do musically. Okay. As a solo artist.
These albums, you said, they're all kind of pieced together. They all kind of go together. When you initially first started putting these albums together to piece them together, what was really your intention? Were you trying to put together like a 3 pieces of albums together, or were you just saying, well, we'll see where the next one leads to, where it takes me?
No, I mean, when I went in to record the Cobblestone Street, that started this whole thing about me going out and actually taking my sound to the stage by myself. I was only concentrating on that album. But what that album led me to was that I followed myself 100%. And once I had toured on that album around the world, and I sat down and I had now the need to write again, I simply just followed everything that felt natural. I didn't try to create anything else but what came from me sitting and playing the songs. And then on the 3rd album, Nomad, which is coming out, like I said, August 28th, that album is a band album. Okay. Sound-wise, it's still a solo album, and that was also not necessarily planned. It just happened. Okay. That as I had been doing another tour around the world with museum, it just led to that. I sat down and started writing, and instantly I could hear that this was going to require a full band, and this album is recorded in the way that the 10 songs on the album are almost the identical sound through all 10 songs. This is a band playing the songs live, where it's just the difference in the songs itself that makes the changes, but the sound throughout the album is a consistent sound. Okay. And that's what I wanted with that album. Right. And to me, it's a completion. It shows confidence. It shows a space and a place that I've gotten to where I'm very comfortable, and don't search for anything else. And there's once again an enormous amount of self-expression and laying everything right out on the table, so you're not confused about anything that I say. And that's just the mission and the message from Mike Tramp. Yep. It is a little different than maybe some of my colleagues, but I stand by it 1,000%.
Yep, true expression, and that's the gratification, knowing that it's you put a lot of passion, and it's a lot of yourself, and everything you put into your music will show. So the people that follow and like your music will see the true expression of yourself, which is great. So you're on tour again this year. How did last year's tour go? Pretty well? Sounded pretty good?
I mean, this has been a phenomenal experience since I started in 2012. I actually started in 2012 going out and touring like that, and it's been 150 shows every year around the world, all by myself. and you know, you learn a lot about yourself, and you know, at the end of the day, you know, it's gratifying because one of my songs is called "Trust in Yourself," and that I did from the beginning.
Okay.
And I never doubted it. I just says follow how you feel, and doing that, you know, at the same time with me also being who I am, it's a natural thing for me to do this, and I don't have to change. I'm comfortable around the fans. I'm comfortable coming in through the front door and leaving through the front door, and wanting for the audience to know Mike Tramp. This is not a show. This is more, you know, a sermon or something like that. I mean, I'm inviting them in to know the real me,
Right.
if they didn't already know that.
And an acoustic show really does that. It brings
sure
that
does, you know, exactly.
and brings that
I don't
intimacy.
have anything to hide, you know, and it gives me a chance to bring people back in time and then bring them also up to the current and sort of let them know why we're here today and why it's so natural to me.
So when they're coming to a show, they're getting the journey of Mike Tramp.
Yeah,
which
plus
is
I
great.
get another hour after the show where I hang out and I sell my albums and T-shirts and take pictures. So it's like,
Great.
it's pretty big.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap this up. I appreciate your time. We're in an age now where the fans love the interaction with the artists. You have a website, and are you on any other social media?
Yeah, Mike Tramp Official.
Okay.
There was already somebody else taking Mike Tramp, so now it's Mike Tramp Official.
Okay.
Facebook.
There you go, and you can get a hold of everything on there, what's going on, and
It links to all kinds of different stuff.
Okay, great. That is fabulous. Well, thank you so much for your time. One last shout out here to the Mike Tramp fans here in Minnesota.
Yeah, listen, a lot of people don't know this, but this is where White Lion broke first, right here in the Twin Cities and Minnesota. So a long overdue thank you very much.